Welcome in to the latest version of the Creighton basketball newsletter video. I'm Jon Nyatawa with the World-Herald. The World-Herald's Creighton beat writer. We come here once a week to talk about the latest in Creighton basketball, the news, the updates, the roster changes, whatever is going down in the world of Jay's Hoops. That's what we created this newsletter for, to assess it, to evaluate it, and to react to it. So this week, the biggest sort of headline piece was the addition of another player to Creighton's team, Keyshawn Feazell, a 6'9", 235-pound big man from McNeese State, formerly from Mississippi State. That's where he began his career, played 3 years at Mississippi State, played sparingly, and then decided to transfer to McNeese State, which is where he really blossomed and got a chance to get some regular playing time and prove himself. He led his team in scoring and in rebounding. I mean, he was like, one or two rebounds shy of averaging a trip or a double-double all year, 9.9 rebounds per game, 13.1 points per game. So a really, obviously an impact guy at that level at McNeese State. And so he's headed to Creighton to try to make an impact. And I mean, clearly what stands out about his value and the reason for why it is an important ad for Creighton is his experience. He's been around the block, and he's had some high major experience too, so he knows what it takes. He's seen it firsthand, what it takes to have success. So that matters. And then just from a depth perspective too, to just have another body to sort of maneuver your lineup a little bit. It gives you options. Like, you want to have options. If a guy goes down, deals with an injury, or if somebody's in foul trouble, you want to have the ability to mix and match and find a way to, you want to have sort of all your options available and not be sort of constrained into, okay, this is the only thing we can do. I think Creighton's been in that position a few times over the last few years where a guy goes down or a guy gets in foul trouble, and it's like, well, there really is no plan C, D, or E. It's A or B. And once A is out the window, it goes to plan B. So Creighton has assembled a really intriguing group of guys that it seems will give the Jays some roster flexibility where players aren't necessarily pigeonholed to one position, where they have the ability to move around and move guys around. But with Keyshawn Feazell, I think he's more of a traditional sort of center. Well, he's going to play the center position, maybe not traditional in his game, because he does a lot of different things. Obviously, can be a menace on the boards, and looks like he's agile and mobile enough to run the floor the way Creighton does and requires for its bigs, to put some pressure on the rim in transition, and to maneuver defensively. The Jays the last few years have asked a lot of their big men defensively to hedge hard on ball screens at times, that almost create a double team on opposing ball handlers out there on the perimeter to get the ball out of their hands, to keep them from going downhill. So that's put a lot of responsibility on those big men to move their feet, avoid foul trouble, and be disruptive on the perimeter, which isn't like, it takes some time to get used to. And you really commend guys like Christian Bishop and Martin Crumpel, who have really excelled in that role in their Creighton careers toward the end of it. Especially both of those guys were impact players with the way that they defended ball screens. And so maybe a guy, Keyshawn Feazell, has that ability too. So really intrigued to see how he meshes in with the system and how he adjusts. It's obviously, when you're moving up a level, you have to keep the expectations in check. There's going to be some growing pains for him. Obviously, from a competition level, just like going up against Big East bigs, like, that's going to be tougher. But I think one of the other things that, and I wrote a little bit about this in the written version of this week's newsletter, is just, Creighton, the system has allowed for bigs to thrive, but it also, kind of what I was talking about a little bit about what they've done, those centers in terms of their ball screen coverage, but like Creighton asks a lot of its bigs, and for even for veterans, like I think about Manny Suarez, I think about Kelvin Jones, two grad transfer bigs who joined the program over the summer, and then were kind of thrust into the rotation a few months later after had just kind of jumping in and joining on with the Jays. Like they both talked about Creighton's pace, and it's not just sprinting in transition and pushing tempo that way, but it's sort of that constant movement, which again is really good for if you're a big man in Creighton's offense, because it's so tough to defend the fact that those guys are setting a ball screen, then immediately rolling to the rim. And then if nothing's there, they're setting another ball screen. Like they're constantly forcing defenses to know where they are and adjust to them. And, but it's tough because it requires a lot. You got to be locked in mentally, and there's some sort of new habits that have to form, and obviously just from a physical standpoint, stamina has to be increased. And so both of those guys, Kelvin Jones and Manny Suarez, I remember they both mentioned adjusting to the pace and the speed of the game. Again, like being able to physically handle it, but then also, when fatigue starts to set in, you kind of block it out and still are able to focus mentally on everything that's asked of you. So I think that's going to be one of the challenges for Keyshawn Feazell. But again, he's going to be a really valuable piece for the Jays. And one of the other things too I think about is just his impact on Ryan Kalkbrenner. Like Justin Patton, I remember talking to him during his redshirt year about how important those practices were against Jeffrey Grossell. Now Justin wasn't playing; he was focusing primarily on his development because he was redshirting, obviously. But Justin would talk about getting worked by Grossell and realizing like, oh man, I got to do this, and this to get better. But it helped him. He was able to get pushed in practice, and so for Ryan Kalkbrenner, while he's going to have game reps because he's kind of like the expected starter at the 5, and he showed flashes last year. He has some experience already under his belt, so it's not exactly the same. But I think having someone there to push you in practice, who maybe has, like I said, been through some of the wars, who knows some of the maybe some of the game sort of savvy nuances that just the veteran moves that a guy like Keyshawn Feazell might be able to lean on, and it cause some problems for Ryan Kalkbrenner still developing. Like I think that's going to be important too. So interested to see those guys go at it in practice, and to see how Keyshawn sort of again just sort of fits into Creighton's system and adjust to the rise in competition level. But an important add, and let's see, he's the sixth newcomer who's expected to join Creighton's roster here in the next week or two. Creighton's just about ready to start its summer workout conditioning, sort of set up the offseason routine that it gets in. Didn't have this last year, the Jays didn't, so because of the pandemic. So this is going to be really important to get these guys acclimated and not just used to tempo, but and Creighton system, but also its weight training and conditioning sort of regimen. And so all these freshmen, Creighton's class is obviously really highly touted, and we've talked a lot about it. But this summer is going to be important for him to kind of get integrated into Creighton's development system. So that begins now, and obviously sort of that integration and coming together as a team to try to create some continuity and chemistry, that begins now too, and that's important for this group. We've seen how that's played out over the last couple years. Even before that, when Creighton's had success, it's had a group that's really well connected and tight knit, and so when you're adding newcomers into the mix, obviously there's going to be, it's going to take some time to build those relationships, and that's what the Jays are going to do this summer. So, lots going on, and Creighton still has open roster spots, so the Jays could still add and are working actually to potentially add to next year's team. So we'll keep tracking it, and we'll keep tracking the team as it gets back into action and starts working. And obviously, this week, something to watch is beginning on Tuesday, the NCAA is lifting its recruiting restrictions. No more dead period. So players can come visit campuses. Coaches can go out and recruit and evaluate players during like the NCAA sanctioned events and certain AAU weekends. It's not like completely wide open, but they can at least get out on the road and look at 2022 players, see them in person, see 2023s, 2024s, and actually bring players on campus. So it's an important sort of stretch, June, July, from a recruiting standpoint as well. So we'll do our best to track that and pass along the necessary info to you too. So appreciate you watching. If you haven't yet subscribed to the Creighton newsletter, do so. It's just omaha.com/newsletters. You can click a little check mark in the box and enter your email in there, and all of a sudden you'll get these links sent directly to your email each Tuesday. So again, thank you for watching, for subscribing. Tell your friends about us. Let us know what you think. I can be reached on Twitter. DMs are open, or just send me an email, jon.nyatawa@owh.com. Appreciate you, and we'll be back again soon.